Hear me out. I know it's premature, but not really when you look in retrospect. I think the Philadelphia Eagles is the start of a dynasty, and I'm going to give my man Matt a chance to tell me why I'm crazy here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Every day, always every day, Locked On NFL is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. We know that you are watching and listening, and wherever you're doing that, make sure you watch and listen so you do not miss an episode of the Locked On NFL podcast every single day. I'm Tony Wiggins. Today on Fridays, as always, joined by Matt Williamson of Williamson NFL, at Williamson NFL, and the Peacock and Williamson podcast. We're ready to give you a good show today. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you with your first $5 bet. When it wins, it has to win, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Once again, shout out to the everydayers. I'm gonna let you know what me and Matt are going to go through the day. The Patriots are surging in the talent race. What do I mean by that? It means that they have done a very, very good job of assimilating talent to help their young quarterback. And I'm going to harken back to them at the top of the show in just a second. The Browns, they ain't rebuilding. We've been sitting there talking for weeks about the Browns trading off and getting a bounty of draft choices, and they're bringing old guys in the building trying to act like they're going for a Super Bowl win. Matt and I will break that down and tell you whether it's crazy or not. But here at the top of the show, a start of a dynasty in Philly. Matt, you saw Philadelphia up close last year, and you told me, you came right on this show and told me when they played Pittsburgh that your eyes did not lie, that they were a very, very good football team that nobody was talking about. Everybody was talking about Detroit and the rest of these folks. It came into fruition, and they ended up, because I don't think I talked to you since the Super Bowl, they did exactly what you said that they were capable of doing that day that you saw them.
Yeah, very impressive organization, ownership, front office, coaching staff, lines of scrimmage. That's right up our alley, Wig, building with the big guys. And now they're the model. We saw them dismantle what I think is probably the best quarterback of all time in the Super Bowl and showed that blocking is important. Anytime Mahomes stumbles in the postseason, it's when nobody blocks for him. And, a lot of these teams that don't have Burrow, Allen, Lamar, Mahomes, I think look at the Eagles and say, okay, there's hope for us. We don't have to have a superhero at quarterback to really hang in this league. And right. I know you're talking about them doing more than hanging. You're talking about them hanging around for quite a while, right?
Quite a while. And I'm going to explain that after we listen to Lou DiBiase here with Locked On Eagles. They keep signing people each and every day, and it doesn't seem like a big deal. But I'll tell you why, whether or not you think the guys that they're bringing in, why they don't necessarily have to be world beaters.
Well, the Philadelphia Eagles continue to take us through Value Town, signing a one-year contract with veteran cornerback Adoree Jackson. I'm Lou DiBiase, host of the Locked On Eagles podcast. There's a common theme with these signings of Joshua Uche, A.J. Dillon, now Adoree Jackson. Howie Roseman is going bargain bin shopping for cheap, inexpensive talent that at one point was a high first or second round draft pick that fell out of favor with a team and now can prove themselves on a prove-it deal in Philadelphia as a solid role player. I think that's the same fate for Adoree Jackson, who does have 82 starts under his belt, has good speed at the cornerback position, adds a solid veteran presence in a very young room without Darius Slay. Will be competition for Kelee Ringo, but I think what this move does show is that this team does believe in Ringo as a starter. They didn't make a huge move for like a Asante Samuel Jr. type or even a Rasul Douglas. This move shows that they have some experience, but they're going in on Ringo.
Listen, I don't think that the guys that they're signing are great players, but I don't think they have to be. And here's why. The Eagles are very, very young, and they're young at a lot of critical positions, right? When those guys actually won the championship, and this is what I was talking about, connecting this to the Patriots. I remember that Patriots team with J.R. Redmond and all of those dudes, and they came out all linked together instead of getting individually announced with Teddy Bruschi and all of that. we sometimes forget in retrospect that when we saw Teddy Bruschi and those guys that day, the Patriot way did not exist, not to the whole world. When we saw them, they were all young guys, right? What happened that day when they won it, they got something in their DNA. I call it dog years. And bear with me for a minute, Matt. Your dog, when he turns 1, to you, he's 1, to him, he's 7, right? Mm-hmm. A Super Bowl makes players, young players, those rookies from last year, Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell, you know how old they are now? They're 30. That's how old they are. In their football DNA, they're 30 because they did it. They know how to do it. Now, the guys you bring in, they just got to jump on the bandwagon. You bring a 30-year-old cornerback in there. What is he telling Quinion Mitchell that Quinion Mitchell doesn't know? Quinion can actually tell him something. I think because they won the game with a bunch of young players, they are now operating in dog years, and those are the same guys that for the next 4 or 5 years going to be beating the brains out of people in the NFL.
Yeah, it's a great call. I mean, even Jalen Carter and all those Georgia dudes that won a ton of games at the college level and national titles, and let alone the 2 corners you mentioned. And Hurts has now played in 2 Super Bowls and played really well in both. So a couple notes is I thought the loss of Kelsey would really hurt them. Didn't it all?
They drafted another dude. Cam Jefferson was just sitting there waiting.
And he was fine. You know, I worry that one day they'll have to move on from Lane Johnson, but their ability to develop is so great, and especially on the O-line. And I know it's a small thing, but they made 2 little trades that people probably aren't thinking a whole lot about. But they pick up Kenyon Green.
Yeah, man.
Who was really bad with the Texans, but he's a former first-round pick, just like they did with Becton a year ago, you know, and I bet they turn him into a starting right guard. And
right they are.
It's exactly what's going to happen, you know?
Yeah.
They move Kenny Pickett and C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They save a little bit of money, and they pick up 2 more 5th-round picks in the process. You know, like one of those 5th-round picks is going to hit. You know, I mean, just little things like that. They're always picking at the bottom of the roster, and they're loaded at the top. One last note, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's a concern, is I did a little study on their salary cap. And if you look at like way down the road, like 2017, 2018, 2019.
27, 28, and 29, you mean?
In that neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like A.J. Brown's like a $70 million hit. I mean, like some of these guys are crazy cap hits because they're so good with cash spending, they push it down the road, which is great. And it's just banking on the cap going up astronomically, but it has. So it's worked out for them. They know what they're getting into, but there is some rough waters ahead cap-wise.
I think there are too. And you know how you overcome that? And I'm not blowing it off and saying that it's not a big deal. You overcome it by drafting and developing really well. And it 100%. Looks like, and that's the only chance that you have of being able to overcome that. And guess what? They are doing that very, very well. I anticipate Kenyon Green might be a Pro Bowler next year when he gets up there with Jeff Stoutland, because that's just what they do. And then you and I also, I think we have talked since the Super Bowl. We did talk about this, that even though they paid Saquon, now they might go and get a different kind of running back, a guy that they can give 10 touches to, who can be their Justice Hill. The dude they went and got ain't Justice Hill. He ain't even built like him. But don't overlook those 8 carries a game, especially in short yardage with A.J. Dillon. Don't overlook it now, because now they're going to probably take a little bit of that pounding off of Saquon, and statistically he might not have the same years, but the team might be better for it, and it might stretch his career. We're going to talk about teams that we thought were reloading. I've been doing mock drafts where I traded off Myles Garrett, and I had 2 first-round picks, 3 third-round picks. Nonsense. The Browns are trying to build this thing so they can go for it this year. And before you start laughing, just hang on for a minute. I'll tell you exactly what I'm talking about here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down. And that those buzzer beaters are coming. Those Cinderella stories are coming. It's going to be that one team that everybody's going to be rooting for. All right, this is what you do. Make sure you pick your favorites now. Pick who you think's going to win the game. And then you can let the magic work when it comes to by how many and whatever. Staying in on the action. Live betting is there for you to use just in case you miss a few minutes of the game. You can always be on an action all the way until the end of the game. And it's easy and it's fast and you get paid instantly. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action of March Madness. All tournament long, make sure you choose FanDuel. Rolling along here on Locked On NFL on a Friday. And, of course, that means the OG, Matt Williamson. I always got to say, there would be no Locked On NFL if it wasn't for Matt. Matt was right there kicking that door down, man, and we love him for that. We also like Matt for the fact that he was, he scouted, been an NFL scout. I think an organization where he probably got started in that a little bit was Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And listen, man, we got to do a 360 turn, or what's that hard turn you do when you take your driver's license? A 3-point turn. We got to do a hard 3-point turn, and we got to do it with a tractor trailer, because all of us, and Matt, me and Matt included, we're sitting here trying to figure out how can Cleveland make the best of a bad situation. Okay, so here's what Cleveland did. They made Myles Garrett the highest paid NFL player who's not a quarterback in NFL history. Good for them. He earned it and he deserved it. But now they're doing something else, and it's kind of got sneaky weird on me. And I'm going to let Spencer German from Locked On Browns talk about it. And Matt and I are going to spend an entire segment talking about Cleveland and what they're up to. Check this out.
Brandon Ayuk to the Cleveland Browns. It's not as far-fetched as it sounds. I think the Browns have a real opportunity here to revisit a trade for Brandon Ayuk and actually pull it off this time if they want to. There's a couple levels and reasons for this. I'm going to walk you through this a little bit here, but we know that the Browns were linked to Brandon Ayuk back in August, leading into the 2024 season. They could not get a deal done. He was holding out at the time, ended up getting a new contract extension and stays in San Francisco. He ends up suffering week 7, I believe it was, a torn MCL and ACL, done for the year. And, I like back then, the package centered around sending Amari Cooper, and I think it was a second-round pick, third-round pick, something like that, to the 49ers in exchange for Brandon Ayuk. And it was an obvious, like with the Browns even being rumored to make that potential trade, it was an obvious statement that the Browns are trying to get younger at the position, get a guy who's 25 with, a contract coming that would lock him up until he was, almost 30 years old.
Matt, when my grandmother, she wore glasses, and when she heard something that she didn't like, she pulled them off because she said, you know what? I cannot believe what I just heard, and maybe these glasses are making me hear things that I shouldn't. What the hell is going on with Cleveland, man? I mean, now they're talking about trading for an injured wide receiver who's with a big contract that just gave away a big contract. And as of right now, I don't think the time we started recording this that they've signed Russell Wilson yet, but they did trade for Kenny Pickett. What on earth are they doing?
I do know Wilson was there yesterday, and I think he's he's visiting the Giants today on Friday. I mean, I don't know that we've had this conversation yet, but I thought Myles Garrett did them a favor if they would have recognized it and just said, all right, we've cashed out or we've maxed out our credit cards. The Watson trade is just crippling. Let's trade Garrett now while he's asking for it. They finally have a ton of draft capital this year after really going 3 years with adding nothing in the draft. We talk about draft and develop with Philly. This team doesn't draft and develop at all because they don't have any early picks. And they did the opposite. They said, well, money talks. Myles, will give you whatever you want. Stick around, and we're going to push the chips in again. And, hey, I appreciate aggression, and I like teams that want to win. I mean, there are teams that I think that just collect paychecks and don't, give everything they can to try to win. And their ownership is also at the top of the league in cash spending every year. I just don't think that they're, the opposite of the Eagles. I mean, I think the Eagles have a great plan, understand exactly who they are, where the Browns think they're the same and they're just the total opposite. I just think that they're throwing stuff at a fan, hoping it sticks,
Yeah. And they are in a division. They're in a division with Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. I don't know who's going to be the quarterback in Philly, Pittsburgh, but whoever it is, they're going to be better than whoever's in Cleveland.
They'll probably win 8 games either way. No
Yeah.
You or I are the quarterback, right?
Yeah, because that's what they do. I just don't get it. They had an off ramp, man. They had an off ramp. Kind of reminds me of a little joke, and I'll tell it right here because we're in the barbershop. Guy is in a big storm. He's sitting on top of his house, and the waves are coming up, and a little guy on a little raft comes by, and he goes, "Nope, I'm just waiting for the Almighty to send me something else." He says, "Okay." And then another guy comes by, and he's on a log, and then he says, "I'm just waiting on the Almighty to take care of it." And then somebody else comes by, they got room on a jet ski. He says, "No, I'm just waiting for the Almighty." And then finally he asked the Almighty, "What's going on?" And the Almighty says, "Well, I sent you a raft, a jet ski, and a log, and you did not get on it." This is what they had a way
recognize it, man.
They had a way out as a franchise.
Yep.
And they sat there and they played stubborn. Now, Myles Garrett's don't grow on trees.
Of course.
They don't grow on trees. But the mistake here was Deshaun Watson. And we can go back and talk about Deshaun Watson wanting Deshaun Watson when there were at least, a lot of people like to point fingers at them. There were at least 7 or 8 other teams that wanted Deshaun Watson too. I mean, we know who they are. They weren't the only team that were willing to give him that money. But why in the hell did they have to fully guarantee the entire contract? I'll never understand that. He had no leverage.
Right.
I don't understand why they did that. I don't understand why they did this. It's almost as if what Cleveland is doing is they're operating inside of their own little bubble, and none of this stuff connects. It does. Everything that they do connects. The fan base should be happy, like, sure, they're still trying to win and they're not tanking, but the fan base should also be a little bit sad because it just looks weird and it does not look right. Who's winning free agency so far? Well, I want to hear from Spencer German again. Because
real thing on the Browns.
Go ahead.
Their answer to everything is just throw more money at it.
Right. And that's the wrong
doesn't work in this league. Yeah,
no,
right.
it does not. It does not work in this league. And that's a very good point. Speaking of throwing money, I'm glad you mentioned it. Spencer German also made a comment on the squad show. And this is a replay, but it's because I wanted Matt to hear it. Check out who he's talking about of winning free agency.
Like, there's always that one team that spends the most money in free agency, and then they just finish with an average record. Like they get like 6 or 7 wins. It feels like the Bears are kind of in the running for that, while also being in the running for being the 100%. Team that like overhauled their team the most this offseason. So I come away impressed by the Bears. I also think like the Commanders have kind of been sneaky, making smart moves for their team. They obviously made the trade for Laramie Tunsil, which sort of, turned some heads. Deebo Samuel, the same thing, getting some extra help both up front and on the outside for Jaden Daniels. And then, they signed Javon Kinlaw as a defensive tackle. We know their defense needs some overhauling, but it seems like that's something that they're going to continue to do in the draft this year and sort of find some more needs that they have to address there. But I do think like those 2 teams, I think, have stood out as like doing the most impressive things. I obviously look forward to seeing what other moves are made here. The big names are obviously kind of off the board, but there's still some dominoes that have to fall, especially at the quarterback position for some teams.
There are 3 teams, and he just mentioned 2 of them, that I'm going to give a break for overspending in free agency. Washington, we just talked about Philly. Washington has to figure out how to win that game. And they went and got a dude that does really well against Philly, and that's Deebo Samuel. And they got a left tackle that, depending on how the rest of it, in Laramie Tunsil, depending on how the rest of his career goes, he might be a dude that people start talking about maybe going to Canton if things go correctly. So they're okay. And then another team we're going to mention is all right. I don't mind what the Bears did because they did all of this spending in the trenches. Where I have a problem with people who spend a lot of money is when they go get that flashy corner and that flashy X receiver and that flashy pass rusher who's over the hill. I do not mind them spending all of that money if they're spending it to protect their quarterback and affect the quarterback.
And the Bears did the exact opposite a year ago when they're getting Keenan Allen and Adunze and more, and they didn't spend in the trenches. Everyone's talking about Caleb Williams walks into the best situation any first pick overall's ever been in, but nobody blocks for him.
Yeah, he didn't walk nowhere. He ran everywhere. That's what he
right. And some of that's on him. He needs to get the ball out. But I love what they did on the offensive trenches. You know, he's a shorter guy. It reminds me of Bryce Young, where they went out and spent on 2 big guards a year ago. You know, he's a shorter player, first overall pick. And frankly, let's remember where their head coach comes from. He's a Lion. You know, we're going to run the football. We're going to dominate in the trenches. And I adore going to get those dudes because you're not going to get equal value in the draft at guard and center in this draft. Not even close. I mean, Joe Thuney and those type of guys. So they're fine there. I just don't like the players they went for on the D-line. I like the approach. I just didn't love the guys they got, to be honest with you. So 50% of it I love. The other half I have questions about in Chicago.
No doubt about it. Grady Jarrett, great player, a little bit old, a little bit small. So he was the kind of guy that when he was young, his lack of length and arm length and all of that, you overcome it because he's so good. Now that he's older, I don't know if he can overcome it. And then basically they went and got a big end. They went and got a 4-eye guy to play with the kid that they got from the coach. I love the additions on offense, though. There's another team that did some stuff, man. It's the Patriots. We've been comparing people to them for a long time. Mike Vrabel takes over. I want to discuss the things that they have done and the Denver Broncos, who are sneakily saying, we're going to take the part of our team that's the best, and we're going to make that part of our team even better. We'll discuss that and more in the third segment here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder where did all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Surprising insights, all-in-one convenience, easy collaboration. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half your first year. All right, Matty, I said that there were 3 examples of why I did not mind certain teams spending money. 1, the Bears, because they invest in their trenches to protect their quarterback. And I think it also signals that they are going to run the football and use a lot more play action to keep a lot of those edge rushers and those linebackers home for a while before they start chasing after Caleb. And the 2 of the other teams that I really like, well, we like Washington also because they realized they're just a couple of people away. And they went after guys that could help them beat the Eagles. But I also like the Denver Broncos because the Denver Broncos defense was very good last year. They had so many sacks. They led the league in sacks. And Sean Payton is known as this offensive coach, right? He had the patience and the wherewithal, him along with the GM Payton, to double down on defense. Here's what they said about the squad show says about the Denver Broncos, and then we'll get to the sleeping giant in the room, and that is the New England Patriots. Here's what they said about the Broncos.
I'll take a quick moment here to talk about what the Broncos. I honestly, I've been impressed with their approach here, because they had more salary cap space. They got Walmart money. You're entering the final year of dealing with that Russell Wilson dead cap, which is around $35 million, and yet they go out and their first moves are making that defense even better. One of the top defenses in the NFL last year, obviously led the NFL with 63 total sacks. They were pressuring quarterbacks left and right, but they fell off a little bit at the end because they simply just couldn't get home, and quarterbacks were getting the ball out of their hands relatively quickly. The Broncos added Dre Greenlaw as a coverage linebacker. You get Talanoa Hufanga. Look, and I understand the injury concerns that people have with them, especially considering Greenlaw had an Achilles one. I watched him come back in those 2 games that he played here in 2024 before they shut him down due to calf tightness, which is always something you want to avoid. Dude is a heat-seeking missile. He's a fun player to watch, and if he stays healthy, that gives the Broncos a little bit of a dangerous dynamic at the second level. And then you get a guy like Hufanga, who's just a heat-seeking missile. Anything that's in his way, he's going to run through it.
Are we looking at the rebirth of the Orange Crush? And for those that don't, for those that's too young, the Orange Crush, back in the days when they had Craig Morton and all those dudes under Dan Reeves, that was their defense because they were so good. I think we might be looking at the Orange Crush part 2 there, Matt.
Yeah, I think it's a really good defense last year. And Sean Payton's old school. I mean, he grew up under Bill Parcells. And you look at their defensive acquisitions, a lot of it's about stopping the run. You know, Hufanga is a downhill safety. Greenlaw is a thumper that can run. And, you know, they kept DJ Jones. And they don't sound like flashy moves, but it's strength up the middle, stopping the run, and being a physical unit. And, again, Sean Payton knows what he's doing. I mean, this started a year ago. Or when Sean Payton got there, he took the Walmart money and went and got McGlinchey and offensive linemen. And, you know, knowing that a quarterback was coming into place, kind of like we're talking about the Bears a year too late, you know, the Panthers a year too late. It's been a theme here, invest in linemen. And now the Broncos are set up to, now you go get the shiny pieces, you know, give me a running back, give me one more receiver. They added Evan Ingram, you know, because they poured the foundation in year 1 and 2. And it amazes me. I mean, Peyton's been there 2 years. I don't think they've had a great roster, especially the one he inherited. Mm-hmm. He's got a winning record in Denver in 2 years. I mean, he knows what he's doing.
And he did something else smart. Garrett Bowles was set to be a free agent. Yeah. Garrett Bowles in this free agency class, in this market, Bowles, it would have been $35 million to keep Garrett Bowles. They re-upped him to a 4-year deal, and that's a good thing. Some people think when you're an offensive coach, you just want more possessions. I think when you're a great offensive mind and you're going to play a game of limited possessions, I think you're even more important because let's say you're going to get 6 goals at go at 6 goals, 6 times to call plays. I want the guy that does that better. So people think, you know, the better the play caller, the more you need all it. No, sometimes the better the play caller, the less possessions you need because he's going to get the most out of it. Mm-hmm. Now let's get to the Patriots. We started the show talking about them and we compare the Eagles to the Patriots. And to the point where we did not realize that New England, that was the beginning of a dynasty back when they won their first Super Bowl against the greatest show on turf. Today, I thought on paper that they were the least talented team in the National Football League last year. It proved itself to be correct. But even with that, you still saw the potential in Drake May. You saw his toughness. You saw his ability to overcome certain things and to look good despite the fact that he didn't have a whole bunch of people around him. And they had some nice other little pieces, the cornerbacks, or, you know, the nice little young corner and all of that stuff. They are primed and ready. And now Mike Vrabel is there. They're spending that cash and they're really, really injecting a lot of talent into this team. Listen to Mike debate, talk about it, and I'll come back and get your opinion on what you think New England's doing.
The New England Patriots have lived up to Coach Mike Vrabel's hype thus far in free agency, making one of the biggest and most aggressive splashes on negotiation day. I'm Mike DeBate, host of Locked On Patriots, and the Pats have bolstered their defensive front, reportedly signing defensive tackle Milton Williams to a 4-year, $104 million contract in a move that immediately upgrades the Pats' front 7. And he had a monster year in 2024. 5 sacks, a career-high 40 quarterback pressures. Those 40 pressures were more than Williams had in the previous 2 seasons combined. And of course, he shined the brightest when the spotlight was brightest, in the Super Bowl when the Eagles defeated the Chiefs to capture Philadelphia's 2nd Lombardi trophy. If Christian Barmore is able to return to the field in 2025, he and Williams are going to form an elite tandem along that defensive line. Regardless, Williams' presence alone will resurrect the Patriots' defense for this season and beyond.
All right, Matty, real quick, I'm going to go through some of these names that they signed. Mac Hollins, underrated, big physical player. If he plays for your team, you're going to love him because he comes to the it'd be 30 degrees below zero. He ain't got no shoes on. And you always love a guy like that. Austin Hooper, he re-signed. They went and got a veteran offensive tackle in Morgan Moses. That really lifts the floor of the room, right? They go get Harold Landry, who the coach is very, very familiar with. Milton Williams, the big signer from Philadelphia, who's going to come in there and play a little 3-tech for him, all right? They got Robert Spillane, an underrated linebacker from out in Las Vegas, and then Carlton Davis to go on the other side of their young guy Gonzalez. I think, man, look, I'm not all about all of that spending, but it's obviously they need an injection of talent, and they got high character football guys to come and help this football team.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, want to start with Moses because he's going to be the adult in the room. They're going to draft a lot of O linemen. There wasn't much to go after in the O line market. Moses does raise the floor. He's going to be the leader in the O line room. First round pick, second round pick could be O line. Who knows? I would have loved to see him add a receiver. There wasn't a lot of options there either. But I think May is pretty special in that he has shown that he can live with crap receivers and crap O-line and still survive as a rookie. So those things will be coming. But boy, this defense got a massive facelift, and I think it's going to be a plus unit, a well above average defense led by Vrabel. And I'm with you. Maybe they did overspend on some contracts, but some of these teams, Wig, that come into free agency with like more money than they can spend, it's almost a problem. Like, where am I going to put my money? I mean, there's not that many good free agents to invest in. So go get the good ones,
Yep. And I said all of that, and this is the thing that's even more that makes that even more impressive. And you said a lot. They picked fourth.
Yeah.
And they don't need a quarterback.
Right.
So if somebody does, and I don't think if Cam Ward goes, I don't think there's somebody there where they're going to get a bounty for him. But let me tell you what they're going to be sitting there looking at. They're going to be sitting there looking at something like this: Travis Hunter, right? Who can play?
Then they run to the podium if it's
and you play him at wide receiver,
and
you make him your slot because you got two corners already, and they become a man-to-man nightmare for whoever. They could do. Ted McMillan. You just talked about them needing a wide receiver, a big-bodied wide receiver, Will Campbell or somebody like that, or the Mimbu kid out of Missouri. They have all possibilities on board because of the way that they approach free agency. They are really going to have a chance to absolutely sit there and pick best player available, or even move back a little bit and still get a very, very good player. And I'm looking at New England, and I'm thinking like this thing might get turned around a little bit faster than we thought.
And they could be the team, maybe it's at the trade deadline or after the draft, that makes the Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill trade. There's always Ayuk. We talked about him earlier. There's always a receiver that they can pay that their old team can't, Higgins or whoever. I mean, like, there could be a big name receiver to be named later. Maybe it's even next off season, but they got all the money in the world to get that guy.
Yep. And you're right. You want to know who they're going to pick? I'll tell you what, follow Locked On NFL Draft, man. That's what you do. My man Damian Parsons and Coach Keith Sanchez give it to you like you can't get anywhere else. It's wherever you get your podcast. Tap into Locked On NFL Draft when you're doing your mocks. By the way, here's one I'm going to throw out here for obvious reasons. And obvious doesn't have anything to do with what he looks like, is what he plays like. I bet you any amount of money on day 2, Xavier Restrepo ends up in New England. I'm calling it.
Love it.
Man, that's what he is. He's a route running fool. He's a little bit of Wes Welker. He's a little bit of Edelman, and he is going to fit perfectly with a team that knows how to use him, and New England knows how to use him. Matt, always good to see you on Friday. We'll see you next Friday. You guys make sure you tap in to the Peacock and Williamson podcast as well as Locked On NFL. We're here all the time giving it to you like you can't get anywhere else. Take care. Enjoy your weekend.